The 2023 Beautiful England calendar features 12 locations across England that we have decided to visit, preferably on our motorbikes during the month that they feature in said calendar. Rounding out the year, December sees us heading to our second most northerly destination of Rydal Water in the Lake District. And just to add a bit more pressure, we only had one weekend free in which to get this done, which just happens to be the first weekend of the month, which you may remember featured some newsworthy weather. We had discussed a few options with regards to riding up to and exploring the Lake District, as one or two people have suggested that it might actually be quite a nice place to ride your bike around. With it being December though, these plans all relied heavily on the weather, as we didn't fancy giving Hardknot pass a go if it was wet or icy. With limited daylight being our only definite consideration, we decided we would ride up early on the Saturday, gunning it up the M6 junction 36 before checking into a travel lodge just south of Kendal. We would then see what the weather was like and hopefully go for a nice ride through Windermere, up the A592 and A66 into Keswick, and then down the A591 to our destination of Rydal Water and back to the hotel to warm up. According to my phone, the weather for Saturday was set to be, quote, partially sunny after a bit of a cloudy start, with Sunday looking similar, which sounds almost perfect for this time of year. We layered up enough to have just enough movement to handle a motorbike and went to fill up with fuel before heading off. Before we even managed to get onto the major roads, Frey's visor kept building up with ice, and her camera quickly acquired a layer of solid water. My windscreen protected me from this, but the cold was getting into my legs and feet, and this is at about 50 miles per hour. We made it 10 minutes along the A5 before deciding that several hours up the M6 at 70 mile an hour would be hell, as the promised sunshine was nowhere to be seen. We turned around and headed back home, and just to emphasise how bad of a decision it was to be out on bikes in this weather, the roundabout outside the Triumph factory gave me a quick lesson in how dangerous roads can be in the winter.
Oh my god!
This was my first time falling off my bike, though other than a twisted ankle and a smashed side light, the bike and I were fine. We got it home and realised just how cold the air was.
Thick there. All around your shirt, around your neck, around your visor. Doesn't really show up too well. On your knees. Your knee. I don't know.
Look, that's about as much flex as I've got in my boots. They are frozen. Like there is no. Oh, Jesus, look, that won't even give away.
We then threw our luggage into the car, got the seat warmers on, and headed up north. We were just outside of Birmingham when we first saw the snow, and we were even more relieved that we decided to ditch the bikes for the car. The weather did clear up for a while once we got to the other side of the city, though when we left the M6 at junction 36, the snow started falling properly, and by the time we arrived, our hotel looked more like a ski lodge than a travel lodge. Having arrived much later than anticipated, we decided to go to Rydal Water in the morning before heading home, though we did need to leave the hotel in search of food as there was no on-site restaurant. We found a Chinese in Kendal and headed out into the snow. We could see the main road from our hotel and could see that traffic was still moving. What we couldn't see was that the roads hadn't been gritted and the cars were just following the tracks left by previous vehicles. Because my horrific and near-death experience had left me with a little bit of a limp, which also made operating a clutch painful, it was up to Frey to heroically get us through those conditions. Luckily, she's the calm one in the relationship, and she managed to take it easy and get us to the takeaway and all the way back to the hotel again. Driving in the snow has this weird duality where it's arguably the most dangerous conditions to be driving in, but you're also going slow enough that you can take in and appreciate just how nice everything looks in the snow. The next morning, we saw traffic moving much more quickly along the road outside of our hotel, and the chap at the front desk said that all of the A roads had been gritted, which is all we wanted to take anyway. The hotel was on the A591, which leads through Windermere and up to Keswick, with our destination being on that same road. However, it seems like the chap at the front desk had maybe misheard some information. The roads were clear at first, but soon after Kendal the roads had clearly been ploughed, but gritted they were not. There were clear paths where you could keep some of your wheels on the tarmac, but these were much more narrow than the road should be, and we often had to stop to let cars come through the other way. It was also somewhat off-putting to see the amount of cars that had just been abandoned on the side of the road and then later buried further as the ploughs came through. You know, in films where people are exploring the jungle and start coming across heads on spikes, this was starting to give off a similar vibe. We kept in mind that these cars would have got stuck the previous night, with the ploughs likely coming through early in the morning, and the snow had stopped falling on the roads, so they were only going to get more clear as we went. Right? I didn't record any footage of our journey through the narrow, twisting roads of Windermere, as that didn't seem fair while Frey was driving in such stressful conditions. But with some patience and care, Frey got through without any issues at all. Besides, it turns out that for the second time in this year-long challenge, with the first being Storm Noah in April, we were stuck in a weather event being reported across the country, so there's plenty of footage about how bad the snow was around here. We eventually made it to the car park we'd picked out next to Rydal Water. By looking at the calendar photo and comparing it to Google Maps and Street View, we eventually ascertained that it had been taken somewhere around here, looking over the lake towards Nab Cottage. The thing is, all of this area is off the footpaths, and in this weather was very swampy, while also being covered in snow, so you weren't sure where the actual floor was. After getting so far and my ankle starting to pulsate a little bit, we decided to head back to the road and take a photo of the spot where the calendar photo was taken from. It's a shame we couldn't line this up properly, as what are the chances we would actually be there in the snow to be able to properly recreate the shot? Anyway, with us being about halfway between Kendal and Keswick, we had to decide which route we would take to get back to the M6. The chap at the front desk of the hotel has said that he lives in Blackpool and that the M6 was completely clear of snow, which made us realise that once we get to the motorway we should be free of snow-related worries. We knew the route through Windermere was passable, but there were no towns between Rydal Water and Keswick, which should mean more open roads and less congested streets. We took a punt on the northern route and were luckily proven right. The roads were almost completely clear, and we even got some sun for a while, as well as being treated to the most awe-inspiring scenery we had seen all year. We will definitely be back up here on our bikes when the weather is much more appropriate, as the Lake District almost seems like it was designed for bike rides. And walks. And boats, I suppose. The A66 was just as clear as the latter part of the A591, and the M6 was completely free-flowing, allowing us to get home without any issues. Other than my twisted ankle, broken light, and Frey's frayed nerves after all of that snow driving. Which brings us to the end of this year-long adventure. It's been an absolutely fantastic undertaking, and something I recommend anyone else living in a smaller country give a go. We got to see parts of the country that neither of us has seen before, we discovered some excellent biking routes and little hidden treasures along the way, and arguably, most importantly, we have solid evidence that we are not fair weather riders. Though we'll probably try to avoid riding in the frost from now on.